Hello, we're Mara Setzer and Giselle Leza from Campus Eugenio Barcesada and Jorge Abdo and Esteban Treviño from Campus Santa Catarina. In this project, we will be talking about exponential functions and some examples of these types of problems, such as India's population, an Android phone contract in storm regions, and mainly the Chernobyl disaster. An exponential function is a function whose value is a constant raised to the power of the argument, especially the function where the constant is e. These functions can have either growth or decay, depending on the problem stated.
India's population was 1.14 billion in the year 2008 and is growing by 1.34% each year. What would be India's population in 2023? First, we have to set the year 2008 to 0, so the initial population will be 1.14 billion. It can be solved using the basic formula A equals P times 1 plus R elevated to T, where A equals actual population, P equals original population, R is the rate, and T is the time. The rate will be equal to 0.0134. The initial population will be equal to 1.14 and the time will be 15 years. So by 2023, India's population will be 1.39 billion.
Another function represents the total number of Android smartphone contracts in thousands held by a certain AT&T store measured quarterly since January 1st, 2010. Using the same basic exponential formula as in the first example, which is the final amount equal to the initial amount multiplied by 1 plus the rate, and that elevated by the time given, we can see that in the end the graph will be defined by the initial amount of contracts, the rate of those contracts, and the time after the year 2010. Due to this exponential function that we use, we will be able to see an increase and a decrease depending on the success of the phone contracts.
The Chernobyl disaster occurred in April 26, 1986, in the Unit 4 of the nuclear power station in Chernobyl, Ukraine. The operation crew was testing the turbines to keep the coolant pumps running in case of power loss. The idea was to lower the safety system to 25%. However, when the experiment was performed, the safety system was lowered to less than 1%.
The power of the plant had to be increased slowly, but 30 seconds after the start of the test, the power had rapidly increased and the reactor's emergency system failed. There was an explosion and the ceiling cap in the reactor was blown off. The graffiti covering the reactors lighted up on fire and kept burning for 9 days. The exponential growth of something is the increase whose rate becomes more rapid in proportion to the total number or the given size.
The function used to show the exponential growth is A equals PE to RT, and the graph that represents it looks something like this.
The substances and the nuclear energy in Chernobyl had not been able to be contained due to the high reactivity of the element plutonium, which tarnishes in the air and also spreads really quickly, affecting other surrounding countries like Poland, Romania, Ukraine, and parts of Russia.
The lack of the complete octet is what makes plutonium behave like it does, which makes it very reactive. Plutonium tarnishes in the air and also reacts with carbon, which is a big problem, because the air we breathe is made up of carbon, and that can hurt us internally.
Radioactive material, such as plutonium in Chernobyl's case, experienced decay due to the atoms not being stable, so they turn into radiation and particles. We can say that this is an exponential decay mainly because each day passing, the remaining pounds of the material start to decrease, just like in an exponential function.
It would definitely take a long time to completely dissolve plutonium out of Chernobyl, and thanks to our exponential formula, we can conclude that unfortunately, plutonium will take millions of years to be wiped out of Chernobyl, and Chernobyl will take thousands of years to sustain life.
Nuclear energy is very useful, but it can lead to very deadly disasters. So to use nuclear energy, you have to be very careful with it.
Nuclear energy is a clean energy because it has the lowest impact on the environment. 64% of the energy used by the United States is nuclear energy. There is a nuclear plant in Mexico located in Alto Lucero, Veracruz, near the Gulf of Mexico. However, we were not aware of that. We think that it is probably safe because of nowadays safety norms are followed very strictly. We agree with having a nuclear plant despite the dangers of having one. Because when specific safety norms are followed, nuclear plants produce energy that lowers greenhouse gas emissions, is very powerful and efficient, and is reliable and also cheaper. Chernobyl could have been prevented, since the operating crew had little knowledge of the process that they were following and did not know the correct guidelines and tried to control the process faster than it should have been. If the reactor had been better designed and operated correctly, then there would have been no problems.
Nuclear energy and radiation at the time, there was no way to stop the exponential spread of radiation across the world. We could say that Mexico was one of the less affected areas when compared to Europe. 4 environmental consequences that the Chernobyl accident provoked were: first, the nuclear rain from the disaster reached all the way to Ireland. Then, because of the radiation, Greenpeace places the eventual death total of 93,000 cancer deaths worldwide. The radiation also caused many mutations in the population in the surrounding countries. And finally, some animals in the ocean were harmed due to the radiation given in the Chernobyl. In World War II, the United States threw a nuclear bomb in Hiroshima and later in Nagasaki, both situated in Japan, and it destroyed cities, caused several radiation effects in all of Japan, and with that explosion, a lot of people, plants, and animals were severely hurt or even killed. And the environment, such as roads, buildings, lakes, and rivers, were damaged due to the radiation given because of the bomb.
Ignorance and also little knowledge of the risk that using those materials could lead to. These consequences could have not happened if only there was more research about dangers of nuclear use.
Our proposal for this situation is to do a lot more research before testing anything, and using the right equipment and facilities to ensure a better use of nuclear and radioactive material.